Hello, YouTube. We are back in our read along Bible study session. We're in Genesis chapter 2 now. I'm just going to jump right into it because I want this to go by at a good pace. I want you to be able to digest what we are reading in a really logical and fa- uh I wonder if fallible is a word, but I'm not sure. But I want you to be able to really soak up what we're reading here, piece by piece, as we have been doing. So now we're in Genesis chapter 2. I'm going to just get right into it. We're going to read the chapter heading. We didn't do that in Genesis chapter 1 because I wanted the creation story to be really unique and really invested. And so we're going to go and we're going to read the chapter heading. Chapter 2. The creation is completed. God rests on the seventh day. The prior spirit creation is explained. Adam and Eve are placed in the Garden of Eden. They are forbidden to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Adam names every living creature. Adam and Eve are married by the Lord. So that's the chapter heading. That's what it starts with. So we're going to go into to verse 1 of chapter 2. Verse 1. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all of the host of them. Verse 2. And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. So it's really interesting, and I think it's really cool that God, as infinite and powerful as he is, he still likes his rest. And I think rest is really important. And this is where I think I know I get into this a lot, but or I might get into this a lot, but I really don't think that aliens are good. I think aliens are demons. I think the aliens are demons even more so because God rested. That's what humans do. Humans get rest. Humans sleep. God created man in God's image. And so we're going to keep going. And in verse 3 it says, "And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made." So he made a special day on the seventh day and he rested. And so you could say, here's what's interesting. If God rested on the seventh day, then God really and truly could have created the earth in human days. It could be the same and as what a human day was. God's creation could have been so much faster than we're thinking because God is infinite, beyond infinite, and very powerful. And we're going to go into verse 4. These are the generations of heaven and earth, heavens and the end of the earth, when they were created, in the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. Verse 5. Oh, we're going to go back into verse 4. I'm going to read it again because I didn't understand it quite. Verse 4. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created in the day of the Lord God made the earth and the heavens. So this is monumental. It's it's speaking about how this was the generation. Like this was the generation that God created. This was it. This was the beginning. Because God is the beginning and the end. This was the beginning of all of the generations of the earth. And so we're going to go into verse 5 now, and it says, "And every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb in the field before it grew, for the Lord had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground." So this is interesting that he had not created rain and clouds yet. It was a separation from heaven and earth. Um, and I guess it makes sense when we go back through Genesis chapter 1 that we went through, where we have that separation of heaven and earth. My theory breaks down that I had where it was water, ice, and cloud. He actually separates heaven itself from the earth. And so that makes me think, like, how big is heaven, right? Okay. And we're going to go into verse 6. But there went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. So that's where maybe my theory is correct, and that he created those elements, but now it's describing those elements in chapter 2. So I think my theory's pretty spot on, or pretty solid. In Genesis chapter 1, we went through and there was a verse that separated the water and its rushing waves from the heavens. And that is where I theorized that that was the clouds and the water and the ice, and it was separate, you know? And this is where it describes it. In verse 6 of Genesis 2, it says, but we're going to read it one more time. It says, but there went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the ground. So this is the first time it rains in our creation story, and that's really beautiful. We're going to go in verse 7. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. So here's what's really interesting. He creates man as an element in Genesis chapter 1, and he creates the gender of man, male and female. So it's almost really divine. And then in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, he creates them as a living, breathing being. So he takes these elements that he's created in Genesis chapter 1, and he's turning them into, like, creatures and beings and souls, and it's really cool. Yeah, it's blowing my mind. Reading Genesis this way is insane. Okay, we're going to go into verse 8. And the Lord planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. So God creates the Garden of Eden, and this is where I messed up a little bit, and I thought God created Garden of Eden chapter 1. Not really. He didn't really create Garden of Eden chapter 1, but he created the earth in chapter 1, or the elements of the earth, or even the earth itself. And in the Garden of Eden, we see in verse 8, he created that garden, and he puts Adam there. So he puts this soul there. Verse 9, and out of the ground made the Lord to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, and the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So he places Adam in the garden, and then he forms the garden, which is really interesting. Adam doesn't, like, God doesn't just place Adam in the garden like as it's, like, after it's formed. God, according to this, which is really cool, Adam gets placed in the garden, and then God, like, raises plants from the ground and creates the garden, which is really powerful and really cool. And we're going to go and read verse 10. And the river went out from Eden to the water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into four heads. So so God is creating, like, pools in the Garden of Eden is what this reads to me. It's how this reads to me. And we're going to read verse 11. The name of the first is Pison, which is that is it which compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. Um oh, okay, we need to read verse 10 again. I okay, this wasn't making sense to me for a second. So if you um it says in verse 10, it says, and a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into four heads. So the river runs out of the Garden of Eden and it splits into four like lakes or bodies of water. And in verse 11, it's talking about gold. This is crazy that gold shows up this early in Genesis. It says the name of the first is Pison, that is it which compasseth the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold. And verse 12, and the gold that is and the gold of that land is good. There is bdellium and the onyx of stone. The onyx stone. Okay, so it's describing stones, so we're just going to move on. And the name of the second river is Gihon, which is the same is it that compasseth the whole land of Ethiopia. I've heard of Ethiopia before. That sounds familiar. And the name of verse 14, and the name of the third river is Hiddekel, that is it which goeth towards the east of Assyria. And the fourth river is Euphrates. And I've heard of Euphrates as well. And we're going to go into verse 15. And the Lord God took man and put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. So this is where God says, okay, take care of my garden. And Adam was already in the garden, but Adam sees God raise up the garden, and then Adam sees God say, okay, now I want you to take care of my garden. And then we go into verse 16, and it says, and the Lord God commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat. Verse 17 says, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die. So this is really cool. This is really interesting because it shows how powerful souls are, and it shows that a soul can have a body and that they can be one and eternal, because Adam was eternal at that point before he had partaken of the fruit. Because in Genesis chapter 1, God creates the elements of man and the elements of male and female. And in Genesis chapter 2, he forms man into a soul. So, and a body, like a physical body. But Adam is a soul, and he's an eternal soul at that point because he hasn't partaken of the fruit of the tree of the good and evil. We're gonna go into verse 18. And the Lord God said, it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him an help meet for him. And verse 19, and out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air, and brought them unto Adam to see what he would call them. And whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. So eternal Adam here named all these creatures, and it's really cool. And verse 20, and Adam gave names to all the cattle, and to the fowl of the air, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found an help meet for him. So it's like Adam searched for help. Adam searched for a helper among the creatures of the earth, and they it says meet for him, which is Old English for doesn't measure up, or measured up for him. Meet for him is what meet means in that sense. And so we're going to move on. Verse 21, and the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh thereof. This is infinite power speaking here. It's not just surgery. Because the flesh closes up. He probably gets a new rib. In verse 22, he says, and the rib which the Lord God had taken from man, made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. So he brings forth a soul of a woman out of the rib of the man, which is really nice. Okay. And brought her unto the man is the end of verse 22. And 23, and Adam said, This is now bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. So this is so elemental. It's I wonder if there's Hebrew for it that mirrors it like this. I think that would be really cool to read and to see. But yeah, we're going to keep going. Verse 24 says, There shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. So this is describing how man and woman are so unified together because woman was brought forth as a soul out of the rib of the soul of Adam, which is awesome. That's so cool. Verse 25, the last verse of Genesis chapter 2 says, And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. So this is where they have not partaken of the fruit of the tree of good and evil, which are dangerous elements in the eternal and infinite heavens. And so they were not ashamed because they were souls. They were eternal at that point. And so thank you for reading with me in Genesis chapter 2. We have now finished the chapter, and we're going to head into chapter 3, and I'm going to link chapter 3 right here. Right here. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in